This video is brought to you by Kimi. ChatGPT who? Never heard of her. So I recently just turned 35, and that made me realize that technically, I'm able to run for president now. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hereby declare that I, the philosophical gamer, will be... Alright, just kidding. But recently I have been seeing more and more of these quite flattering comments, if I may say so myself, urging me to run for president, which made me wonder, what would I actually do for Gen Z in a hypothetical alternate universe where I became president? Everyone's talked all about the problems facing Gen Z over and over and over at this point. It's been beaten to a pulp. But the more frustrating thing is that no one from either political side is offering great solutions either. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of tired of sitting around hearing the same old solutions that we know aren't going to work over and over and over from both sides. So since no one is willing or able to offer real solutions, this made me think, fine, maybe it's just time I do it myself. And that's what you're about to see throughout this whole video. For the first time ever, real, serious, fresh and new solutions for the challenging times we live in today. Real solutions for Gen Z in 2025. Not 1960, not 1980, not 1990, the modern day. This is what I would do for Gen Z if I were president. Hey guys, just wanted to say thank you all so much for this incredible, rapidly growing community we're building here. You may have noticed we're getting very close to 40,000 subscribers now. This is just crazy, guys. So, if you're new here and enjoying this content, definitely consider subscribing and helping us get closer to this magic number. Thank you all so much. Absorb what is useful. Discard what is not. Add what is uniquely your own. Bruce Lee. This was a life-changing quote from one of the biggest influences in my life, Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee didn't like the idea of labels at all, and for very good reason. He didn't like the idea of being confined or limited to one specific style of martial arts, because different situations are going to have different optimal responses. Wrestling might be a deadly threat to a boxer, but would totally backfire against a jiu-jitsu guy. So Bruce Lee adopted a philosophy of learning from as many different disciplines as you can and combining them to create something completely unique, different, and better. And that's exactly how I approach not only my politics, but my life in general as well. And you'll see a lot of this in my hypothetical presidential policies. So I'm neither a liberal or conservative, neither a capitalist, socialist, or communist, despite how many Nazis in the comments try to label me as such. Like Bruce Lee, I want to take what's useful from every ideology, discard what is useless, and add my own unique ideas to create the best possible solutions, bar none, for young people today. So that's what we'll be doing. That being said, although I personally don't like labels, I do understand that labels do help people make sense of the world and understand new concepts. So I came up with what I believe is the best label to describe my new political and economic system. Techno-geolibertarianism. I know, that's a mouthful. So let's just break it down to using the promise of technology and the free resources of the earth to liberate people from the shackles of modern-day slavery. And let's start with the techno part of it. Now, Gen Z is rightfully very concerned about the insane, meteoric rise of AI right now. Everyone is concerned about it, to be fair, but it hits Gen Z the hardest as it's directly already taking their jobs as we speak. Now, there are two possible paths we can take when it comes to AI. Path number one, either we try to ban it or at least heavily restrict it. Technology has ruined many aspects of our lives, and as a 90s kid, I can definitely understand the yearning to go back to when times were simpler. And if you're someone who's not too familiar with AI, you might just think, well, hell, why don't we just ban it? Unfortunately, there's just a few problems with this solution. To kick things off, a blanket ban on AI is just not likely to happen, as despite all its problems, there's just too much money to be made, promising solutions and future potential in this technology. But even if everyone in America were to suddenly change their mind and decide to ban it, there's an even bigger problem that makes an all-out ban all but impossible. Even if America were to ban it, that doesn't mean every other country would. So if other countries are allowed to go ahead continuing supercharging their AI development while America bans it and gets left behind, well, this is just a recipe for disaster. So unfortunately, as much as I wish we could go back to the 90s too, it's just simply impossible and impractical at this point. So this leaves us with our only inevitable path of option 2. We go all in on AI, supercharge its development, and do our best to put the right people and policies around it so that it leads us to a utopia rather than a dystopia. And that would be my very first priority as president. Speaking of AI, okay, so for those of you out there who still think AI is overhyped or is in a bubble, you are about to have your mind blown. We all know ChatGPT likes to hallucinate, often giving you inaccurate and unreliable information. And yet, here they are still charging people $200 per month. This is Kimi, a new AI with technology every bit on par with ChatGPT, but a much better user experience. It gives much more precise and accurate answers with reliable sources instantly and immediately available. For example, Kimi recently helped me a ton when I was doing research on a recent video. Recently, you've heard me talk a lot about how hunter-gatherer tribes only had to work 2 to 3 hours a day, got over 2,000 calories per day, and generally lived much better lives than we thought. Now, I'm going to ask Kimi here to give me a brutally honest and objective analysis of how their lives compare to that of Gen Z today, who, as we all know, have to work upwards of 10 hours per day and despite that, still find themselves having to skip meals from time to time. No capitalist fluff here, no romanticizing the past either, just the cold hard facts and evidence. So, as you can see here, Kimi instantly scours the entire web and every conclusion it draws is backed up by reliable, cited sources, many of which come from professional media outlets and even academic websites. This significantly reduces the chances of hallucinations and, as you can see, has been an absolute game changer for me in real life. So, whether you want to cook new delicious recipes, start an online side hustle to escape the 9-to-5, or even just get better at your favorite competitive video game, Kimi has the capabilities to make this process far easier and more efficient for you. But that's not even the best feature yet. You see, Kimi isn't just for chatting, it also empowers you to create. The feature Kimi Slides allows you to create entire PowerPoint presentations with just a click of a button. This video you're watching right now is about the policies I'd implement for Gen Z if I were hypothetically president. So I'm going to type in a prompt here to ask Kimi to help me make a visual slideshow that will be very useful throughout the video, and watch as the magic happens. And as you watch this process unfold, you can see that this is just absolutely next level AI technology right here. And the very best part is Kimi is completely free and unlimited to use. So check out our link below and give it a shot today. Alright, so if you watch my videos, you already know I'm a huge advocate for universal basic income. We've covered all the reasons why in literally hundreds of different videos by now, so I'm not going to get into too much of it here. To quickly sum it up, the land of the earth was free to create, so the fact that we have to pay $2,000 a month to live on it is the biggest scam ever. Now I'm going to be more focused on exactly how I would fund it though, because that is a legitimate concern. So, the first thing I do as president to fund this UBI would be to instantly and immediately cut off all federal aid money to colleges and universities and directly give it back to every 18 to 25-year-old in the form of UBI. And there are several very good reasons I would do this. First off, I believe with how much we screwed over the younger generation with our stupid, outdated advice, Boomers, Gen X, and even millennials have totally lost the right to tell Gen Z what to do with their economic futures. So as a result, I don't believe in using taxpayer money to fund failing universities that are clearly not producing useful degrees anymore. Now, I'm not saying we should shut down universities altogether. If they want to continue existing, that's their right to do so. But then they should be forced to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, just like the rest of us. Giving universities that are already charging such exorbitant tuition fees even more taxpayer money is already insane to begin with, but we generally accepted it in the past because we trusted the older generations to be wise enough to make the right choices for the youth. Clearly, that was a huge mistake, and these delusional boomers have long lost the right to make decisions for us. The best thing about this policy is that we can make it happen without increasing spending or taxpayer burden by even a single dollar. We just be redirecting current taxpayer money that's already being wasted on these useless colleges and giving it directly to young people so they can have the agency and freedom to invest it into their own futures however they see fit. Given all the crap they've been through due to our bullshit outdated advice, they've more than earned the right to have that, and we've more than lost the right to tell them what to do. Now, the bigger question is how much exactly would they be getting? So when you combine all forms of federal taxpayer handouts given to these useless colleges, direct federal loans, Pell Grants, college tuition aid, and beyond, you get a total of around $200 billion per year. Now, divide this by the 31.5 million 18 to 25-year-olds according to the most recent consensus, and you get a total of $6,400 per year. This is how much we could directly give every 18 to 25-year-old without increasing spending, taxes, or inflation by even a single dollar. The beauty of this is that they can use this money to do literally whatever they see fit. They could still use this money to go to college if they personally still believe in it. But the world also needs people who thrive outside of a college system as well. So many great entrepreneurs and inventors did not go to college, and this gives us the agency to create many more of them. Now, of course, not every 18 to 25-year-old college dropout is going to be the next Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, but not all of them need to be. Some will simply spend it on their hobbies and passions, for example, art, music, sports, gaming, etc. Some might use it to save up to buy a house or start a family. And yes, I'm sure some will use it on destructive vices like drinking, smoking, and gambling as well. And guess what? That is not our problem. We can only give people the freedom and agency to make the most out of life. We can't hold their hands every step of the way. The second you try to restrict and control what people can and can't spend money on, you enter a very, very slippery slope towards an authoritarian dictatorship, and nobody wants that. Policy number 3, a post-labor, post-scarcity world.
In a benign scenario, probably none of us will have a job. But in that benign scenario, there will be universal high income, not universal basic income, universal high income. There will be no shortage of goods or services.
Those of you who follow me will know that I'm no fan of Elon Musk or billionaires in general. But as Bruce Lee said, you have to absorb what is useful and discard what is useless. I don't agree with Elon Musk about his insane RTO policies, for example, but I do agree with him when it comes to this. I just think this post-labor, post-scarcity world is closer than he thinks. In fact, I believe we are already living in it as we speak, or at least the potential for it. We're just too brainwashed by narcissistic capitalists to accept it and implement it. We already have enough houses built to house everyone. This is a mathematical fact. We have enough food to feed everyone in the world. Another mathematical fact. You may have heard the government claim that the unemployment rate is 4% or whatever, but those of us who have been through the job search process know that this just can't be right. And your intuition would be correct. The unemployment statistic is heavily manipulated for the government to save face. It only includes people who are actually looking for work. It doesn't include those who have been so discouraged from applying to and getting rejected from 1 billion job applications and counting that they've just totally given up on searching for work altogether. It also doesn't include students with useless degrees that will never get them a job anyways, boomers collecting Social Security, stay-at-home moms or dads, and the like. You've heard me say this before, but a better metric to determine the real unemployment rate is to look at the total labor force participation rate, which counts everyone who doesn't have a job. And when you look at this, what you'll see is that damn near 40% of people are unemployed already as is. And what this means is that Elon Musk is actually accurate with his assessment, but wrong on the timeline. The fact that already around 40% of people don't have a job means we are already living in a post-labor economy where having a job is optional. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think of the word mandatory, I think of something at least 90% of people or so have to do. I don't think of anything mandatory that 40% of people aren't doing. I've never had a mandatory class assignment that over 40% of people weren't expected to do. So clearly jobs are already optional right now as we speak. And it's not as if society is collapsing because so many people aren't working. In fact, quite the opposite. Think about it. If society really desperately needed people to work, they'd be begging you to get a job right now. You'd be getting job offers with good pay left, right, and center. The fact that 40% of people aren't working, and yet it's still so hard to get a job, means that it's obviously not necessary for everyone to have a job anymore, as is right now. So, where does this all leave us? Well, we earlier talked about why I believe the only path forward is to supercharge the development of AI and put the right people around it to make sure it benefits us all. Some will counter, however, by saying AI is all overhyped. Now, I obviously strongly disagree with this assessment, but to be fair, I can't rule it out with 100% certainty. But here's the thing. Even if you took the most extreme AI skeptic position and assumed AI hits a hard limit right now and never advances again, we are still already living in a post-labor economy, given that 40% of people aren't working right now. Even at its current capacity, AI has already displaced 14% of the workforce. This is on top of the fact that automation, outsourcing, and the internet had already replaced a ton of jobs before AI was even a thing. So, since we are already living in a post-labor economy, the solution is very simple. We simply learn to accept it and make the most of it. The reason everyone feels so lost and confused right now is because work is already optional as is, but we're still trying to force everyone to get a job because we're still mentally living in a past era where jobs were in fact necessary. This creates a cognitive dissonance, a confusing paradox where we expect everybody to get a job, but we only have enough jobs for 60% of the population. So instead of trying to create wealth by hard forcing people to get jobs that don't exist, the solution is to try and create wealth for everyone in the new paradigm without working. So how do we do that? Universal basic income is a great start, but the solutions can't end there. AI is taking a lot of jobs that used to pay very good money, and simply replacing that with a check that guarantees the basic bare minimum is still going to feel really bad. So we have to eventually get to a point where, as Elon Musk said, we have eventually a universal middle class income and then a universal high income. So how do we get there? As president, my first priority would be to prioritize AI and robotic development to be able to first do all the necessary essential jobs. Growing food, cleaning the streets, building houses, etc. All jobs that robots will be doing sooner rather than later, by the way. For a while, most people, including myself, thought that physical-based jobs would be safe from AI for a while, but even that's not turning out to be the case anymore. And I would immediately impose a heavy robo-tax on companies for every robot they use. If you think about it, this just makes logical sense. When you hire a human worker, the human worker has to pay taxes, as we've all experienced. So it only makes sense that robot workers have to do the same thing. And I would specifically demand that these robo-taxes are funneled into UBI and UBI only. You may have noticed that despite how anti-capitalist I am, you've never once heard me say tax the rich, and this is because while I certainly appreciate the spirit, it really is just an emotional battle cry with no real plan behind it. Taxing the rich is okay, but what exactly do you plan to do with the funds? We all know the government is extremely wasteful and inefficient with taxpayer money. For example, the one thing they love using taxpayer money for is bailing out the failed businesses of the rich. So you tax the rich only for the government to use that money to subsidize the failed businesses of the rich. What the hell is even the point? This is why taxes must have specific plans as to exactly what they're going to be used for. Now, speaking of taxes, one tax that I would immediately implement as president is a land value tax. You've heard me talk about this before in other videos. The earth and its land were created entirely for free, billions of years before humans even existed. So the fact that we have to pay so much money to live on land that was created entirely for free is quite frankly the biggest, most evil scam and fraud ever. One potential solution is to just allocate everyone their own free piece of land, but this is just a nightmare to implement logistically speaking. So a better solution to ensure that everyone gets their fair share of the free land on this earth is to simply implement a land value tax. This is where we don't tax the property of the house that's built on top of the land, we tax the land beneath it. This, by the way, is not some radical new age concept. This is known as Georgism, proposed by one of the great economists of all time, Henry George. Henry George made the argument, and in my estimation, the correct argument, that land value is not generated by property owners or landlords, but by the community. And this just makes logical sense if you think about it. If you build a house or make improvements upon your existing property, you should reap the benefits as you put in the work for that. But when it comes to the land beneath the house, the land was not created by the individual landlord or property owner. Land value is created by the surrounding community who built the parks, schools, roads, amenities, and infrastructure that make the land an attractive place to live in. This is why the same exact house would cost way more in New York City than in a rural town in North Dakota. And since land value is generated by everyone, not just the property owner, it only makes sense that the value is shared amongst everyone as well. Now, the Federal Reserve estimates that the value of the entire land of the United States totals out to a staggering $24 trillion. Yes, you heard that right, trillion with a T. If we were to implement even a modest 5% land value tax on it, that is enough to give every 18 to 30-year-old a staggering $26,000 per year in universal basic income. But it would probably be more reasonable to extend it to every 18 to 45-year-old, which would amount to almost exactly $10,000 per year. Again, this could all be done without raising prices, spending, or inflation by even a single dollar. This type of tax is so brutally efficient and logical that it makes many of the traditional problems of taxing the rich a self-correcting issue. Taxing the land just straight up makes way more sense than taxing labor. And best of all, the whole issue of capital flight, aka what if rich people leave, is now impossible. They can leave all they want, but they can't take the land with them. So all these numbers put together gives us a universal basic income of around $16,000 per year for young adults and $10,000 per year for everyone up to the age of 45. And we haven't even factored in the robo-tax yet, which will be by far the biggest wealth generator with how fast this technology is evolving. Now, it's really hard to fully gauge just how much value this is set to generate because the numbers are constantly changing due to the rapid pace of progress in AI and robotics. But given that we've already guaranteed everyone a universal basic income by implementing a land value tax and cutting off these useless universities alone, it is safe to say that a robo-tax will then eventually take us to the promised land of a universal middle-class income and eventually one day a universal high income. So I believe without a shadow of a doubt that even with the resources and technology available to us today, right here and right now, we are already living in a post-labor economy and we can guarantee everyone a dignified life without forcing them to work. But this does lead to a deeper question. What do we all do with our lives at that point? Do we just sit around doing nothing all day collecting UBI checks? No, far from it actually. Part 4, meaning and purpose. Now, as much as some of my haters would love to label me a communist, there are some fundamental differences between the policies I'm proposing and communism. The ideal outcome of communism is to implement a classless, stateless, and moneyless society. Now, I do like communist supporters more than capitalist ones. At least they're honest and well-intentioned in their arguments and viewpoints, but when it comes to actual economic policies, I believe communism is unfortunately just as outdated as capitalism is. Because you see, one thing you don't see in the description of communism is a laborless society. Communism is all about giving powers back to the workers and the community, which is great, but giving power back to the workers doesn't make sense anymore if the goal is to free people from work in the first place. That being said, even in the post-labor, post-scarcity world I've been envisioning throughout the video, I don't think human labor will cease to exist entirely. I think it'll be optional, and it'll be something of a luxury good. Think of how we view the term handmade today. A lot of people will still pay premium prices to buy handmade jewelry, art, furniture, etc., even though machines can do them now for cheaper, just because they like the idea of human authenticity and connection. And I think just about all goods and services adopt some form of that in the post-labor world. For example, you'll go to a futuristic restaurant where robots do all the cooking and serving, but there will still be a section where you can pay premium prices to get your dinner human-made. This way, the few people who do actually like their jobs will still be able to live out their meaning and purpose, but without being held hostage by their jobs. Key difference there. So, we'll still have classes, we'll still have opportunities to get rich and climb the ladder, we'll still have incentive to strive and improve ourselves and find meaning. We just won't be forced to do it the way we are now under capitalism. Those who still want to work will be compensated even better. Those who don't want to work will get to live out a dignified life, pursuing whatever hobbies and passions they have without having to work a 9-to-5 job they hate. It really is a win-win for everyone. Conclusion. Alright guys, so yeah, these are basically the primary, most important policies I'd implement as president. Brand new, fresh solutions you've never heard of before. Now, for this one, I'm going to do something a bit different. I'd like to just fully open up the comment section for this one and ask you all to just leave your most brutally honest opinions and feedback. Tell me these ideas are awesome, tell me they're horrible and would never work, tell me whatever you honestly believe. Because I think it's important everyone's perspective is heard as we're rapidly hurtling towards a radically different world, and it's important everyone gets a say in how things play out. Although I'm not a communist, one thing that might surprise you is that boomers are suddenly becoming extremely communist now that they realize it would benefit them. We expose their breathtaking hypocrisy in full detail in this video right here. Check it out. I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.